There is a reason you haven't reached the life you dream of yet. And it's not because you're not smart enough. It's not because you weren't born rich. It's not because of the government, the algorithm, or the boss who doesn't see your worth. And it's because you're still running an old operating system. A brain wired for survival, not success. For safety, not prosperity. For fitting in, not breaking through. You cannot build a life of abundance with the code of scarcity still running in the background. You cannot attract wealth when your deepest belief still whispers, I don't deserve it. It's not for people like me. What if I fail? Understand this. The mind is a battlefield. Every day you are either programming it for power or letting it default back to fear. And most people, they live their entire lives letting their mind drift, letting the world, the media, the school system, the family drama write their script for them. They let trauma become truth, and they let old patterns become prisons. But the people who rise are the ones who shift into wealth like it's inevitable. They do one thing differently. They take full control of their thoughts. They don't just think differently, they train their thoughts like a soldier, like a monk, like a champion who knows. Every thought is either building my future or stealing it. Let's get something straight. You were born with a Ferrari under the hood, a billion neurons, limitless potential. But if no one ever taught you how to drive it, if all you've ever done is react, survive, play it safe, then it doesn't matter how powerful your brain is, because potential means nothing without direction. The mind doesn't care what you feed it. It will grow weeds just as fast as it will grow flowers. If all you give it is worry, doubt, lack, fear, that's what it multiplies. But if you give it discipline, vision, gratitude, belief, it begins to shift. It begins to rebuild itself. This isn't magic, and it's neuroscience, it's repetition, and it's intensity. It's the rewiring of synapses that have kept you in cycles for years. And think about this. Every belief you have, someone gave it to you. Every limitation you live inside, and someone planted that seed. Every story you tell yourself. I'm not good with money. I'm not the type to succeed. I've always been this way. It's just a thought you've repeated long enough to believe it's real. But thoughts are not truths. They are scripts, and scripts can be rewritten. Henry Ford once said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. It wasn't just a cute quote, it was a neurological fact. Because your brain is always listening, and it is watching you think. And it adapts, it builds roads between your thoughts. Think a thought often enough, and that road becomes a highway. Now your brain doesn't even question it. It just drives the same path over and over again. This is why people stay stuck. Not because they lack talent, but because they keep walking the same mental roads expecting different destinations. You want wealth? Then you have to bulldoze those old roads and build new ones. You have to catch the thought and ask, is this helping me or hurting me? Is this the mind of a millionaire or the mind of someone surviving? Is this the voice of my futures or the echo of my past? This is the work, not the outer hustle, not the 10-hour days, but the inner war between who you've been and who you must become. And here's where most people fail. They try to change their results without changing their identity. They try to make more money while still thinking like the version of themselves that fears money. They try to scale a business with the mindset of a desperate employee. They try to attract abundance while emotionally addicted to lack. You cannot outperform your identity. You cannot build a life that contradicts the way you see yourself. If you want different results, you must become someone new, and not someday. Now, you want to rewire your brain for wealth? Then you must decide, deeply, fully, finally, the broke version of me is dead, not broken dollars. Broken standards, broken beliefs, broken energy. That version of you doesn't get to drive anymore, and you thank it, you bury it, and you move forward without it. Carnegie didn't wait until he felt ready. Oprah didn't wait until it made sense. Jobs didn't ask for permission. They became the future before the world ever saw it. They lived in the identity of success, long before success ever paid them. That's what it takes. A total shift, a new language, a new mental blueprint, and a new emotional home. You don't hope for wealth. You build the mind of someone who creates it. And from that mind, all else flows. Discipline becomes normal. Focus becomes natural. Risk becomes necessary. Sacrifice becomes sacred. Because the person who is wired for wealth doesn't ask, what if it doesn't work? They ask, what must I become for it to work? And that shift, that rewiring, doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. It happens by designing a new way of being and rehearsing it daily, by visualizing, affirming, acting, living as if you are already becoming. Because the brain doesn't know the difference between real and vividly imagined. It just builds the bridge. So the more vividly you see it, the more emotionally you feel it, the more frequently you repeat it, the more permanent the wiring becomes. It's not enough to dream. You have to install that dream into your nervous system. You have to breathe it, speak it, walk with it until the world has no choice but to align with what you've declared. The subconscious doesn't care what's true. It only cares what's familiar. And most people, they stay broke not because they love it, but because it's familiar. It's known. It's safe. They've wired their nervous system to respond to chaos, to struggle to just enough. So when abundance starts knocking, when opportunity appears, they sabotage it. They shrink, they flinch, because wealth feels foreign, and anything foreign your brain will fight until you train it to feel like home. This is why lottery winners lose it all. This is why people who hit big crash even harder, because the inner world couldn't hold the outer blessing. The roots weren't deep enough to sustain the fruit. So if you want to build wealth, real wealth, you don't start with money. You start with the mind. You train your nervous system to feel safe in success. You normalize excellence. You regulate your emotions, not around survival, but around expansion. You don't flinch when money increases. You expect it. You don't feel guilt when you win. You own it. Because you've become someone who's worthy of it, and not in theory, in identity, in your cells, and in your self-talk, and in your state of being. So how do you rewire your brain for wealth? By rewiring your standard for what's acceptable, your standard for who you surround yourself with, your standard for how you speak, think, move, execute. Because your environment is not neutral. It's either feeding your programming or corrupting it. If everyone around you is broke in mindset, you'll eventually match their frequency. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. We're wired for belonging. We model what we see. We mirror what we hear. So if you're serious about wealth, you must be ruthless about your circle. Audit your atmosphere. Is it reinforcing your old code or pulling you into your new one? And is it a thermostat keeping you comfortable or a furnace that forces growth? You are not just fighting your past. You are fighting everything around you that wants to keep you the same. That's why this work is spiritual. That's why it's sacred. This isn't just about affirmations. It's not about vision boards or good vibes. This is neural surgery. This is identity transformation. This is breaking generational code and building a new empire from the inside out. It's waking up each day and asking, who do I need to be today to match the life I say I want? And then becoming it before anyone gives you permission, before the bank reflects it, before the results appear. Because results come after. The shift starts first, inside, quietly, privately, with the thoughts no one hears but you. Thomas Edison didn't wait for light to happen, and he became the light. 10,000 failures, and still he persisted. Why? Because he wasn't just chasing an invention, and he was wired for it. The vision was coded so deeply into his system that no external rejection could override it. That's what wealth demands, not a dream, a decision. A core deep identity that says, I will not leave this life the same way I came into it. And when the doubt rises, because it will. When the fear creeps in, when the voice says, who do you think you are? You answer with fire. I'm becoming everything I was born to be. And no belief, no programming, no lie gets to keep me small anymore. This is how you rewire the brain. Not in comfort, not in passivity, but in battle and in repetition. In refusing to leave the gym of the mind until the old code breaks and the new one takes root. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be committed. Because every time you replace a limiting thought with an empowering one, you're building a new road. Every time you catch yourself thinking small and shift back into power. You're laying new neural tracks. Every time you show up when it's inconvenient, you're telling your brain, this is who we are now. And eventually, the old you fades. The new you becomes automatic, and wealth stops being a wish. It becomes a natural extension of who you've become. You want to know the moment the shift becomes real? It's not when you make your first 6 figures. Not when you buy the car or get the house. It's when you stop second-guessing who you're becoming. When you walk into a room and no longer shrink. When you hear the old voice in your head, the one that used to run your life, and you don't obey it anymore. That's when you know the wiring has changed. Not because the world changed, but because you did. The way you speak, sharper, more intentional, more precise. The way you move, deliberate, purposeful, urgent but peaceful. You no longer chase, you attract, you no longer beg, you command. Because now the world isn't responding to who you were. It's responding to who you've trained yourself to be. That's the power of mental wealth. It's invisible until it's undeniable. And once it locks in, nothing is ever the same. You stop looking for opportunities and you become the opportunity. You stop seeking approval because you're anchored in self-trust. You stop waiting for success, but because you're building it in real time, moment by moment, thought by thought. This is what separates the few from the many. Not talent, not luck, not privilege, but the willingness to go inward when the world tells you to look outward, to master the mind when others are escaping it, to train your inner world until your outer world has no choice but to obey. The world is loud right now. It's noisy with fear, with distraction, and with trends and tricks and temporary fame. But the wealthy, the truly free, they are calm, focused, still, because their minds are anchored to something deeper than approval. Their self-worth is no longer negotiable. Their identity is no longer rented. They own themselves. That's the root of all wealth. Ownership. Ownership of thought, of attention, of time, of energy, of decisions. Because once you own yourself, no one can buy you. Not with doubt, not with comfort, not with shiny distractions. You're unshakable, unbothered, unstoppable. This is what you've been called to, not to survive this world, but to transcend it and to lead, to expand, to break the mold, to create a life that looks nothing like the one you inherited. But to do that, you have to unlearn. You have to deprogram. You have to uninstall every lie they taught you about what's possible. You were not made for mediocrity. You were not made for wages and worry and waiting for retirement. You were made to rise, to create, to dominate the space you were born to occupy. And that begins the moment you stop saying, what if it doesn't work? And start declaring, I will become the person for whom it must work. You see the difference? Most people want guarantees. They want proof, certainty, a plan B. But the ones who rewire their minds for wealth, they don't ask for guarantees. They become the guarantee. They bet on themselves when no one else would. They kept building when no one was watching. They kept showing up long after motivation left the room, and eventually the world caught up. Not because the world changed, but because they did. That's what you're doing now. With every new thought, with every shift in language, with every act of discipline when no one's watching. You are becoming the kind of person wealth cannot ignore. It's not about luck, it's not about timing, it's about alignment. When your thoughts, your beliefs, your habits, and your actions all line up in the same direction. That's when momentum hits. That's when flow begins. That's when you don't have to force it anymore, because wealth is drawn to you like gravity. And people will ask, what changed? You'll smile, because they won't see the hours, the inner work, the mindset battles, the days you fought through doubt and still showed up. They'll see the result, but they won't see the rewiring, and that's okay. Because this was never about being seen, and it was about being free. Free to think, free to build, free to wake up with vision instead of stress, free to invest in the people and causes you believe in, free to choose your life, not settle for it. That is wealth, that is power, and that is what happens when you stop waiting for the world to change and change yourself instead. You've come this far for a reason. You're not listening to this because you want motivation. You're listening because something in you, something ancient, something raw, is ready to be awakened. This isn't about money anymore. This is about dominion over your thoughts, over your fears, over the patterns that kept generations before you stuck in cycles of survival. You are not just shifting your life, you are breaking chains. You're rewriting DNA. You are telling the old story, this ends with me. You don't come from wealth? Then wealth will come from you. You weren't taught the rules of money? Then you'll become the one who teaches them. You failed before? Then failure is your raw material. You've been broke? Then you've seen the other side, and that hunger will make you unstoppable. Let the world chase trends. Let the world scroll itself into numbness. You've chosen something higher. You've chosen mastery, discipline, focus, conviction, and you've chosen to become the kind of person who cannot be broken. Because you've already rebuilt yourself from the inside out. The rewiring is done with repetition, with intention, with fire. Every day you rise, you affirm your new identity. I am wealth in motion. I am the storm the world didn't see coming. I am building the kind of life that rewrites history. And it doesn't matter how slow it looks today. What matters is that the old you is no longer in control. And the new you, the real you, the wealth-minded, clear-visioned, disciplined, relentless version of you is now at the wheel. That's the shift. That's the moment the world begins to move differently around you. Because when you stop thinking like a beggar and start moving like a builder, a creator, a leader, everything changes. Not immediately, not all at once, but inevitably. Because identity always wins. Because action taken from belief becomes unbeatable. So here's your charge. Don't just dream, train. Don't just wish, wire. Don't just wait, work. Every day, every thought, every breath. Build the mind of the future you. You want to know how to rewire your brain for wealth. This is how. You burn the boats, you silence the noise, and you rise before the sun and speak life into your mind. You act with intention. You cut the old cords. You refuse to answer to the identity that settled. You go all in, not someday, now, because wealth doesn't start in your wallet. It starts in your wiring, and you just flip the switch.